It is March the 8th, 2021, and today's reading in the book of Joshua is chapter 16. The allotment for Joseph began at the Jordan of Jericho, east of the waters of Jericho, and went up from there through the desert into the hill country of Bethel. It went on from Bethel, that is Luz, crossed over to the territory of the Archites in Ataroth, descended westward to the territory of the Japhletites, as far as the region of Lower Beth Horon and on to Gezer, ending at the sea. So Manasseh and Ephraim, the descendants of Joseph, received their inheritance. This was the territory of Ephraim clan by clan. The boundary of their inheritance went from Ataroth Adar in the east to Upper Beth Horon and continued to the sea. From Mikmethath on the north, it curved eastward to Tarnath Shiloh, passing by it to Janoah on the east. Then it went down from Janoah to Ataroth and Naarah, touched Jericho, and came out at the Jordan. From Tappuah, the border went west to the Kanath ravine and ended at the sea. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the Ephraimites, clan by clan. It also included all the towns and their villages that were set aside for the Ephraimites within the inheritance of the Manassites. They did not dislodge the Canaanites living in Gezer. To this day, the Canaanites live among the people of Ephraim, but are required to do forced labor. Amen. Now imagine that you were related to a multi-billionaire and he dies, and at the reading of his will, you're there and you are mentioned by name, and you are told that you will be left millions, that's the money, but also many mansions on many islands. Well, of course, you'd want to know the exact bank account details, wouldn't you, to access the money? And you'd want to know the precise addresses of those mansions and the locations of those islands. And how would you feel? You've got all that information given to you. How would you feel then? Maybe it took a few hours for all that information to come to you. How would you feel leaving that meeting? I think surely you'd be walking on air, wouldn't you? Well, I think something similar would be happening in chapter 16 of Joshua to the descendants of Joseph, as they're called in verse 4. These two tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim. They have been listening to now in this chapter. They've heard the reading out of the will, as it were, and the precise details of their inheritance. That word is used again and again and again, and throughout these chapters in this middle section of Joshua. How overwhelmed they must have been as they are told about the areas and then the towns and the villages and everything that makes up this beautiful inheritance in this promised land. Though there is, don't forget, and we'll see this as a bit of a drumbeat through these chapters, there is also a sobering note of failure to conclude in verse 10. As believers today, we have surefire promises of a glorious inheritance. I'm going to take you to finish in a moment to the Gospel of John and chapter 14. I guess when we read chapters like Joshua chapter 16, they probably this isn't anybody's favorite chapter who's listening here today. And maybe we wouldn't be filled with joy and a sense of excitement and anticipation for the future as we read these words. But I can assure you, the Jews were then, particularly the men and the women of Manasseh and Ephraim, they would have been overwhelmed with excitement at what the Lord had promised and is giving them. And surely it should make us look forward to the fulfillment of God's promises for us. And these promises, there's no failure here. There's no inadequacy or limitation, or even the possibility of rebellion or defeat here. These promises are perfect, and they are promises of a perfect world, a perfect inheritance promised to all of God's children. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I am going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am.